Well, good afternoon. I'm Gina Easton. I just so happen to have known this person for about 46 years when I was 14. And he was an artist when I met him. So I'm always intrigued when I walk into the studio and looking like, where is that coming from? So I'm going to introduce Mike Easton.
All right, hi.
How are you?
Oh, amazing.
Great.
Now that I have you sitting by my side, the one thing she failed to tell you guys
Oh,
is
Lord.
that though we started dating at the age of 14, she followed me home from school. So that's how that story goes. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
He's been sticking to it for about 46 years.
Yeah. So,
He even tells our kids that, and even though they probably don't believe it, but I just let them have at it. So, anything you want to tell us about yourself?
yeah, I'm delighted to be here.
Great.
It's a real honor, and I want to take the time to thank the Hillyer Gallery as well as the board for giving me an opportunity to exhibit my work. I also want to take the time to thank you guys for coming out on such a warm day to join us to discuss this work. I would be remiss if I didn't take the time out to also share that Ilana Casey, who's currently serving as the chair of the department, is supposed to be sitting in that chair, but she had an emergency.
Yes.
So one of the things that I do every day, and I would encourage you to do so, is I make this confession. And that confession is I always know what to do. I always know what to do. So in a moment like this, I say, hey, honey, grab the chair and let's get this puppy started.
Yeah.
So there you have it. So you have some questions for me.
Yes, I have a series of questions that we're going to ask, and I'm going to start with the first one.
Okay.
Can you tell us about your artistic journey and how you developed your unique style?
Oh, that's a great question. My artistic journey, I am the youngest of four. And my mom, like all moms, wanted to make sure we were engaged in during the summer months when we were out of school. Her desire was for us to do something. And so she discovered that I had a knack for drawing. And so I would spend hours drawing like most kids. But one of the things that was unique for me that really, I think, was the hook was an artist by the name of Frank Zapper. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Frank, but he was responsible, or not responsible, but he was one of the artists that would deal with the barbarian, I think it was Conan.
Yeah, Conan, yep.
Yeah, and so I was so fascinated with his use of color, how he dealt with the form and things like that. So I fell in love with his work. And so that was the start for me. So, you know, since I was interested in the way he, his painting style, I would try and copy, of course, his work. That gave me an opportunity to learn how to deal with the form, because I mean, he would have some really interesting things happen. My mom, you know, she recognized that. And so she enrolled me in a program known as Sign of the Times, okay, founded by Jimmy Griggs. It was a program in the community, which wasn't far from my home. They offered silk screening, photography, drawing and painting. It was designed to service students within the community and also provide employment. Okay, so it was an opportunity to do that. It was there at Sign of the Times that I had an opportunity to work with artist Lou Stuvall. Most of you guys may be familiar with him, who was certainly a master at silk screening. So I had an opportunity to do that, learn photography. And it was at that time, at the age of 11, I actually was introduced to life drawing. At that time, my mom was a little concerned, of course, at 11, dealing with the figure. But at any rate, Frank copying his work, I was somewhat already familiar with how to deal with the form. So it wasn't a shock to me, okay? It was a shock to her because they were new, but nonetheless, that's how that journey started for me.
Yeah, and
How did I do, man?
I think you did pretty good.
Okay.
So how did all of that help with your unique style? Because when you go and you look at other artists, you have a plethora of different types of ideas. I'm looking at abstracts. I know you do realism. You do mixed media. I remember years ago that you had this mixed media piece that was a TV.
Right.
And it was really mass media talking about how our kids are looking at
programmed.
TV.
Yeah.
We're programmed.
Look at you.
So how did you end up not stuck in one style? What is it about you?
Exposure, and that's the bonus that I received at Sign of the Times. Not only did I have an opportunity to work and meet Lou Stovall, I also had the fortunes to study with a renowned painter, Mr. Simi Knox. For those of you guys who may not be aware, he's the first African American to paint a sitting president. He did Bill Clinton, Thurgood Marshall, Oprah, all of that. And so that was the hook for me also, meeting someone who was painting at such a level that, you know, confirmed that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And he is such an amazing person and fine artist, and he still continues to work today as a portrait painter.
Awesome, set the bar.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: what are the main sources of inspiration for your artwork?
That's a good question. My artistic practice is centered around metaphysics. It's a philosophy, and a lot of it has to do with the study of the mind. I believe a man is what he thinks about all day. So this, when you look at this body of work, what you will see and find that a lot of the subjects are subjects that, a lot of thought went into, a lot of things that I had to deal with personally. Then once I deal with it, then it's up to my audience to deal with it.
That's good, good, that's good. So how do you approach the creative process from concept to completion? What do you do?
Okay, what I do first, it works a number of ways, but for me, usually it'll come to me by way of a title. So I might, get a title, this idea, and then the thoughts about that idea, and then my opinions about that idea, and then my feelings about that idea. So there's a plethora of things that that's going on. In addition to that, being a creative person, I could be sitting in a cafe, I could be reading a newspaper, I could hear a song or something, and it would trigger something. And so that then allows me, once again, to ask the kinds of questions that are necessary to move forward in a work of art.
Awesome. And I have actually seen where he sits across, and I'm like, what? You're thinking about something, what's going on? And he'll just come up and say a title or something. I'm like, okay, we're not even having a conversation about what you just said, so let me in. What are you thinking?
But it's so strong, when it hits me, the conviction is so strong. And, there are a number of things that I'm currently thinking about that's, sometimes it just lays heavy on my chest, and I have to just kind of sit with it for a while, spend some time with it, Yeah.
Now let me ask you this.
Yeah.
This helps us with the next question. How has your life experiences influenced the messages or emotions you hope to convey through your art?
My life experience, how has that helped? Being born and raised here in Washington, D.C., as you guys know. Um, when it comes to politics and political and social issues, Washington, D.C. is just filled with it. Though it is a very beautiful place to live, my experience and evolves around that. Now, I would be remiss, though, if I didn't double back and also say that my mom was instrumental in that it was important to her that reading was very important. So she invested in, at that time, a collection of encyclopedias by Ebony. Okay? It was in those encyclopedias that I learned about my history and the history of this nation. Most of this work is infused with some of that information that I learned. It was in that book that I learned about the ancient kingdoms and societies in Africa long before we got here. So there were some other things already happening. And so that was instrumental. And so in those books, I learned about kingdoms, not only Egypt, but Benin, what was happening in Ghana and things like that. In addition to that, then I discovered seeing like the diagram to the slave ships, how that, process, what that was like, the schematics for that. Then it moved right into antebellum period for me, and then the Civil War, okay, then Reconstruction and so on and so on, Jim Crow and what that was like. And so that made a profound impression on my life because I wanted to learn more about the culture and what life is like as an American. That was very important, though it was hard and tumultuous times, and some of that is still present to this day, and I think this work allows the viewer or my audience an opportunity to deal with some of those things, some of the things that I had to deal with.
And I'm going to go off a little script because I'm looking at, and for those who haven't seen the show, you need to come before it, it moves to the next place. Mm-hmm. But when I'm looking at, we hold these truths, the folks in the room can see. When I'm looking at this and I see peeping behind this American flag, mm-hmm. and then you have the hair and you have the ruff of grass, and tell me what these folks peeping behind this American flag, what does that mean?
Okay, the faces that you see behind the flag represents those empires that I talked about. Mm-hmm. Prior to coming to North America. So that's what that represents. And what's unique about this piece is that what I wanted to do was infuse the painting with that, the cultural practices and rituals of that day. Though we adorn ourselves today, in some cases, with the cowrie shell, cowrie shells actually was a form of currency and a sign of wealth. And so my goal was to reflect that in this particular painting, though some of it is covered up by the flag. My goal was to still break through all of that and still tell that story. So I try to, in my work, use a lot of symbolism and allegories and things of that nature so that there's a story within the story. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's always a story within the story. And so that was my goal there. Okay.
You did.
And also, African sculptures also had a profound impact on my life. And so that's some of the reason why I used a lot of the earth tones and the hair and the raffia grass to try and duplicate or to give that feel. So it's sort of, it has a spiritual kind of feel to it. And so that's my take on that. Yeah.
Great job.
All right.
Okay, I'm ready for the next question.
You're doing fine, by the way.
I know this was the difficult job. So this question, what was the deciding factor for you between becoming an educator versus a full-time artist? And how has that experience of the education versus full-time artistry influenced your current practices?
Right. That's a very good question. Well, I was minding my business when I got a phone call from one of the instructors over at Ellington asking if I could come over and help with the program. At that time, I had just finished up over at Howard, where I received not only my undergraduate degree, but my master's in painting. And I said certainly. As I shared earlier in our conversation, I had the pleasure to study with Mr. Knox, and it was only
your teacher, right?
he was my teacher,
Yeah.
also over to Ellington,
Okay.
and it was only fair that I answer that call and give back what someone gave to me, because I remember those moments struggling with application, how to apply the paint, how to mix certain colors to create a particular hue or change the value and things of that nature. And it was because of the training that I received under Mr. Knox as it relates to color theory. When I got that call, I said, okay, this is how I can pay it forward, you know. So I made that sacrifice, but it gave me an opportunity. Now, as I sit here, I think about Moses on the backside of the mountain, you know, and working with students and watching them fulfill their goals and their dreams. That was the exchange and the reward for me. Not only did I gain a lot sitting under Mr. Knox, but I would also be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to acknowledge the founders of Duke Ellington School of the Arts, Mike Malone and Peggy Cafritz Cooper, and having the idea to develop a professional school for the arts. And Ellington, to date, I can honestly say their contribution to the world is amazing when you think about the individuals that have gone through that institution and who have graduated and to go on to do some amazing things in the world, you know. So I can go on and on and on about that.
Okay.
Did I answer you?
Yes, you have. How does it feel when you are teaching? I just so happen to see when he's teaching and the light comes on for students.
It's a calling.
What is that?
It's a calling. See, you try to make me cry up here.
No, don't cry.
Yeah, it's a calling.
Yes.
To watch a young student render something and produce something based on the information that was provided, and to see the joy and the confidence that they gain from that. When they walk in, seeing and being intimidated by some of the current students, I'll never be able to do this, and then to discover you can do it. And that was important to me. I found myself being probably their biggest cheerleader, In other words, I mean, I stand on the table, I say, you can do this. You can do this. And I would share with them my experiences and what's actually happening out in the world artistically. And once I convinced and proved to the student that they could and created a situation where they would buy in, oh, it was off the hook after that.
That's true.
Oh, it was off the hook. And to see that is priceless. Priceless. And I would share with my students, that's the sacrifice that I made because it's a calling. Not everybody can do this. And I was willing to do that. Put my life on hold as a professional artist to reach back and help someone else.
And he most recently did a commission for a federal judge who was retiring. So it's amazing to see between realism all the way over to abstract that you are have fulfilled it all. So proud of you.
Thank you,
Proud of you. Yes.
Mama.
So now here's the next question. What role do you want your art to play in society? And what is the goal of your creations?
Okay,
Because
great.
probably you can answer that in one.
Well, no, that's a very good question. I think, but the best way to answer that question is, first of all, to identify the purpose for art. And then inside of that, we'll reveal answer that question. The purpose for art is to educate, to commemorate, to entertain, to form follows function, things of that nature, how the work will be used. For me, the goal is to educate and to commemorate my ancestors, also to educate from an academic perspective, young folk who are interested in pursuing art, because in the work they get an opportunity to see the elements at work, from line, shape, color, value, texture, the principles, all of that. And so, my students, or the students at Ellington, have learned that the elements and principles are the means by which we communicate to our audience, and learning how to properly do that in order to discover their artistic voice is extremely important. Whether we believe man is created equal or not, man is created to communicate. And so that's my position.
That's good. That's good. Okay. So when I'm looking at your work and you're talking about, when you read the artist statement.
Yeah.
And one of the things you're asking America to do is to consider.
Yes.
And why should we consider?
Well, that's a very good question. The reason you should consider is because we're all connected.
Yes. Yeah, we are.
I mean, we're all connected. We're all tied. And I think that unless I learn, or the individual learn, to recognize the God within, we're in trouble. Learn the God within and to respect the God within. Without that, we're in trouble. You see, which brings me to why there were laws in the first place to prevent the slaves from reading, because when you read in Genesis, the first thing the Creator does after he makes everything and says this is good, he gets this idea, he says, let us make man in our image. Well, if I'm a slave and I read that, that changes things. Right? So that means if the God of the universe has made all mankind in his image, how then can I be a slave? So there are things like that, you know. So fascinating, right?
Yeah, and I know you could go on and on.
I could go on and on.
Yeah, I know you can.
But I won't.
Yeah.
I know you want me to.
No, I don't. But that's great because we have to identify each human, because everybody bleeds red, and we are all created equal. We might look
Differently.
We might be from different cultures, but we're all humans.
We're all
and
the same.
We're in this together.
We're in this together,
Right.
and well, I'll get into that later. I'm gonna hold that. I'm gonna keep what I was about to say on my chest. Yeah. Let me keep
So let me ask you this:
Yeah.
Can you talk about any upcoming projects or themes you're excited to explore in your future work?
I'm excited about this one. Oh, say, can you see? My goal is to continue building on this. Hopefully, this show will travel from place to place. Oh, say, can you see? We have a homeless situation here in Washington, D.C. and around the world. Oh, say, can you see? But we spend millions, billions of dollars on creating weapons to kill other people. We spend billions of dollars, millions of dollars to bring in the panda from China. You have people starving in the street, nowhere to live.
Yep.
Oh, say, can you see? So there's work to be done. And unless we all collectively are seeing, we miss that because we see what we want to see and we turn a blind eye to certain things. But we're all connected.
Yep.
You know, we're all connected. And so when you hurt, I hurt. But until you can feel that pain, and I think there's something about this work that forces us to have conversation. And I think that conversations are not only therapeutic, but there's something about a redeeming quality when you have conversations, authentic and real conversations. Yeah.
That's excellent.
Was it?
It was.
Thank you.
Okay, last question.
What?
Yes, last question.
Moving through this.
I'm rolling. So how do you navigate the balance between staying true to your artistic vision versus what the market is demanding?
That's a really good question. Well, the market, staying true to myself is easy. That's the easy part. I know what my purpose is. And when it comes to the market, I let the market take care of itself.
That's right.
I'm not looking for fame. I don't have an ego trip. You guys do know ego means to edge God out. So I'm not ego tripping.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
and so the market,
saying.
one day you in, one day you out.
Some days you feel like a nut, some days
So
you don't.
that's not my, right, come on.
Yeah.
So that's not my thing, because not everybody likes what I do. Or not everybody's going to feel what it is I'm trying to say. But that's not what drives me. See, I have to say this. I'm an artist. And as my wife indicated, when she met me, I was an artist. I'm retired as an educator, but I'll never retire as a fine artist, as a creative person. I'll take this to my grave. This is my purpose. And I'm fortunate to be able to fulfill that. You know, I used to tell this joke how adults would turn around and ask kids, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I would tell kids, I say, you know why they ask you that? Because they hope you have the answer for them. They still try to figure it out. What are you going to do? Well, I knew right away when I saw that portrait by Simi Knox hanging at the Frederick Douglass Museum, and I said, wow, I want to do this. as a child, so I knew right away that this is what I was supposed to be doing. And so the rub for me was then trying to just discover my artistic voice, how, how to communicate my thoughts, my feelings, So it doesn't matter to me whether or not I sell a piece. That's not what motivates me. All of my needs are met, and I'm not being braggadocious. I created streams so that I could paint and tell my story. And then I married a G.
I'm Gina, not G, but anyway.
So, and I think the thing that, as long as my wife gets me and my children, I don't have to worry about the market. You know what I mean?
And you've created 3 little artists, which is, I'm the only non-artist in the family, right?
No, you're an artist in your own right.
A different type, right? But when you think about the oldest one is a martial artist.
Yeah.
The middle one is a martial art. Well, all of them were. And then the last one is a musician.
Yeah.
Plays saxophone. So it's amazing that I get to see this side of it. But one of the things that I think has been so encouraging to me, because some kids, I personally grew up as a person that whatever you gave and put in front of me, I figured out a way to do it. It was amazing to me that you had this dream. This dream was something that when I walked into your presence at 14 in junior high school, you knew what you wanted to do. You knew you were an artist. You knew you had to create, and I was awestruck.
Wow.
Because that was not my life. I was the one, you get good grades, you do whatever, things like that, and I was just like, I was just kind of flow through life.
Right.
So for you were clear about your vision, and I say that because there's so many young people who are like me, and it's okay, and I figured out what I wanted to do.
Right. But
whatever it was, just to have that dream is fantastic and allow them to understand that dream of being an artist, that burning desire in your heart that's there, you can do this. And you have at Ellington, and you have teachers that actually pour into these kids and say, your dream is concrete, do this, you're great at this, so let's do this. So I'm proud of you. Well,
thank you, and I'm glad I had you to walk beside me as we took this journey together.
Yep, let's do this.
And I didn't know it was going to turn into this.
Right.
So you guys just give me a minute. But I'm so glad that the universe worked it out where you and I would go through this journey together. And also, I want to publicly thank you for your support and your patience. And because how many of you guys know it's not easy living with a Mike Easton? So, but having you with me as I work through and giving me the space to do this. I mean, we lived in, and we're at the end of this, guys, but we lived in a 4-bedroom house right outside of Anacostia, and my wife made sure I had a studio space where I could work. James, oftentimes she helped me with some of those papers when we were in school over at Howard. I need something typed. Boom, Mama was there.
I was a typer.
So, and even now, so I couldn't have done any of this, even serving as chair over at Ellington for the stint that I did without you assisting and helping. So, but thank you. So we're done. So if we're going to turn it over to some Q&A.
You mentioned that sometimes you start with a title.
Yes.
Is it possible to pick one of your pieces and kind of walk us through, I started with this title and then the different, stages of movement toward getting to a completed piece?
Absolutely.
Which one?
Well,
I'm thinking this one.
yeah, we hold these truths. This piece came about by certainly the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths that all men are created equal. But during the time that was penned, that wasn't the case. And that was a trigger for me. So it was important that I shared with my audience that life didn't start for African Americans here in North America. As I indicated, that we had kingdoms like Benin and different places like that. And so once I got that idea, then the next phase, as I indicated, was the thought behind it. Okay, then my opinions about it, then my feelings about it. Then I began to collect the information necessary to execute the painting. I'll put it this way. First, I visualize it, then I internalize it until it materializes.
So when you thought, you hold these truths, does that mean that then you thought, yeah, I'm thinking there's a flag and it's kind of just being under destruction and there's some stuff being hidden but not quite hidden. Are you thinking that way? Because that's, when I look at it, that's what I see. And I was also curious, what is it like for you as an artist if someone is looking at your work and they're seeing something and they're like, oh, I see this, but it's not what you meant.
Right.
What's that like?
Well, two things, and that's very good. No, for me, the piece at some point began to take on a life of its own. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It wasn't like I'm going to place this here, or, you know. And as I indicated, once I deal with it, it's now up to the audience to deal with it, and it's designed to tug at the heart. And I think, and I wrote something down, you guys don't mind if I do, because but Ida B. Wells said something which was really interesting that sort of speaks to a lot of these pieces. She said the way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them. Light for me also in this has to do with just a conscious mind, you know? And the pieces, or this particular piece, like most in here, requires the individual to check in with self. You know, where am I? Am I having the kinds of thoughts about my neighbor, okay, that's pleasing? Okay, oftentimes. We judge people unfairly and we don't know anything about them. And so this piece, to some extent, is a contradiction of that whole statement. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal at a time where men weren't being treated that way. Though they were brilliant people, they weren't being treated that way. And sometimes we do that.
So art historians often look at paintings to see what was revised, to see what the artist started with. And when you were talking about what you had envisioned when you started this piece, I would like to ask on some of the more realistic pieces, what did you start with that you then painted over and changed? And I don't know, take the piece behind you. Yeah. Because that's what that's the sort of evolution that maybe not this piece, but a more, I guess, flat piece. What did you alter in it? What did you change because your vision slid a little bit as you went through the creative process? And in 200 years, when an art historian looks at something, what are they going to see?
Great question. Let's take a look at monkey business. piece. That's the one in the back there. This particular piece, though my goal was not to create a portrait rather than capture the character of the subject. Trying to set this up so that it would read anatomically was at first a challenge. And my wife, you know, the voice of reason, she said, well, why don't you just photograph your leg? And so I was photographing stuff. And so that allowed me to set this up so that it would flow in a manner that at least aesthetically it would feel somewhat comfortable. Now, being the artist slash educator, big on proportion and anatomy, anatomically the figure is not correct. I know that. It was the statement that I was more interested in. Now my students would come down and say, Mr. E, no, no, no. But to your point, this piece is a part of this whole monkey business thing. And as I began to place the monkeys around, which by the way represents the folly of man, and whenever you see a tied monkey or one that's chained, that means he's ruled by lust. And so initially this guy wasn't, he didn't have that strap, so that was a piece that I added to tie that in. In fact, there's so much more. This piece is screaming at me, saying, hey, you gotta, you know, so I still view this piece as a work in progress. I may paint another one. I view it right now as a sketch. But hopefully that answered your question. Initially, I didn't start with the strap, nor did I, the leg was moving in another direction. And if you were to move this paint, you would see, ooh, I'm glad he changed that. So there you go. So, but when we talk about monkey business, this was also along with that particular piece, which is titled Quo Vadis. In Latin simply means where are we going? I don't know if you guys had a chance to see the 1951 movie titled Quo Vadis. It's on Prime. You get a chance, you need to watch it. It's amazing. So it deals with Nero and the burning of Rome, and then he blames that on the Christians. But what's unique about this whole thing about this particular setting is, and this is me, the artist, I believe that this nation is at a stage of decadence. And it is the final stage before things just come apart. And so, as I indicated, my paintings essentially also serve as a warning. And we can do better. And it's up to us to start setting that in motion. And I think what happens is we sit oftentimes on the sideline thinking it's going to get better when it's not. Now, what I'm about to say is going to really be tough because I don't know everybody's background. So I mean no harm when I say this, but it's equivalent to being in an abusive relationship and thinking it's going to get better. It's not going to get any better unless you do something. So I think as a nation, I believe when the people lead, the leaders have to follow. Any other questions? Everybody good? All hearts and minds clear?
I like the old school.
Well, thank you all for coming out today. Thank you, Mike.
Oh.
Thank you.